Back to the channel, guys, and it's time for some late night thoughts on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. And the most important thing that people seem to ask consistently about any kind of live service game, and is it dead?
Is it dead? Do you think he's dead?
And although Suicide Squad is in its infancy, with the launch that it's had and the amount of hate that the game has received, not always rightly received, I want to take a bit of a deep dive and see why the game might be failing and why the player base is down. Now, before you lose your minds at the sheer amount of tabs that I have open, that's me. Get to know me, enjoy me. That is just me. Now, I don't want to really deep dive into the Steam player count, to be honest with you, because I play on PlayStation, and there is no moniker of how many people bought it on PlayStation. Most of the advertising budget was for PlayStation, so, I mean, who knows the actual amount of players? But if we're being honest, the Steam chat does not make for good reading if you're a fan of the Suicide Squad game. But if we do look at the viewership on Twitch as well, that kind of tells a bit more of a story. Today's actually the day of the boomer drops, and you imagine with the drops, usually you're going to have an influx of people watching, which there is an influx of people watching. And the problem is only with that influx, we go up to 1.8k. And that really, when we start to measure it against some of the other bigger live service games that are out there, is not very good for a day of drop. Because we can already see here another live service game in Helldivers 2. It's not my kind of game, but it is a live service game. It's been out a little bit longer, but not that much longer. Is at 34.3k viewers and is looking a hell of a lot healthier over on the Steam charts. And I know a ton of people will probably be playing this game on console as well, because it had a big launch on PlayStation. So when you start adding all these things together, I think that's why the conversation of is the game dead has come around. And I actually think after the game being out for a little while now, that conversation is absolutely fine to have, because there is definitely a reason why the player base has dropped off. And to be honest with you, was never really there. When I looked at Helldivers, their all-time peak was 458,000. Suicide Squad's is like 13,000, something around that number. It's just nowhere near it. And I genuinely think that this game is very close in these early stages of suffering the same fate of a game like a Marvel's Avengers. And I don't want to liken this to Marvel's Avengers all the time, because this is just an easy thing that people will pick at and point at. And I know people have done that. And I actually really want this game to succeed. I was one of those unfortunate people that wanted Marvel's Avengers to succeed as well. So maybe it's me and I'm just always backing the wrong horse. But I genuinely think the gunplay in this game is a lot of fun. The traversal in the game is a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it, but as I've got to play it more and more into like the 60, 80 hour mark, I am noticing actually how shallow it is. And I come into this wanting a looter shooter. I'm expecting repetitive missions and stuff like that, but I think as you start to dive into the end game a little bit more, it does feel very shallow. And as well as it being shallow, there are just a ton of bugs. We've had another patch today, which hopefully has fixed the Metropolis bug, which, you know, at the end of the day, it's not the most frustrating bug in the world. You have to log off and log back in, and other games have had issues in the past, but your big issue for Warner Brothers and Rocksteady in this game right now is it got so much hate in the build-up that you're always going to be climbing up the steepest of steep hills, and you cannot afford to have patches come into the game that are supposed to make it better and it fail. We're a live service game. This game is supposed to be live, and although I play live service games the majority of the time on my own, I'm that kind of loner, other people don't want to do that. And the fact that we're over a month into the game and matchmaking still just isn't a possibility for the majority of people. In fact, some people can't even play this game. And at the price point, I think this is probably what hurts the game the most. Helldivers, 30 quid. Another one, Grand Blue Fantasy, came out literally a couple of days before it. It isn't a live service game. And from playing it, it's actually probably got more depth to it than this live service game has, and way less bugs. So the game's kind of in this stage right now where it's feeding into the haters. People wanted to hate the game because it wasn't another Batman Arkham game. And I came into the game just wanting a looter shooter. So I kind of knew what I signed up for. But I can't really defend the game too much, because I understand why people are hating on the game. You're not going to give people a good opinion of the game when there's all these bugs. We can liken it to Palworld that just stormed out the gate. People hated that game at the start. It was all made with AI and it was a scam and no one wanted to play it. And wow, a lot of people did play it and a lot of people did buy it in the end. So it does show that if the product that's put out is actually good, it wouldn't have mattered the hate that they got at the start of the game, because people would have come in, they would have played it, they'd have gone, do you know what, this game's actually really good. I'd ignore all that negative outcome and that feedback, and we'd be in a much healthier player state right now. Now, when it comes to some of the bigger issues with the game, I genuinely believe the end game cycle that we have right now it's not very good. And I'm someone who likes a grind, but if I have to do one more Poison Ivy mission in my entire lifetime, I'm going to blow my brains out. It's just the worst mission in the world to have to farm, and obviously you have to progress at least 3 of them. Now, some of the good news was in one of the more recent patches, it does look like we're getting 3 more endgame missions. I don't know what they're going to be like. I'm excited to see what they come out like in Season 1. And you will only have to progress 3 endgame missions in order to improve your mastery rank. So we won't have to do those horrendous Poison Ivy missions anymore. But I also think the Prometheum grind is just a little bit sluggish. We have these markers all over the map with these different missions to grind for Prometheum. And unfortunately, at this stage, they're just pointless. They do give some resources, but not really that much. And in the grand scheme of things, I'd rather run around and raise a little bit of hell for half an hour and then have more than enough Prometheum for a couple of hours, maybe even more, of grinding the mastery ranks. Then I would go around doing these missions. Once you've done them so many times, they just become super monotonous, and I just really don't want to have to do them anymore. Now, I do only really want to brush over the endgame stuff, but I know I'll get comments if I don't talk about all of it. Yes, there is Killing Time, and Killing Time is pretty decent, but for me, it doesn't serve that much of a purpose. It's pretty decent for leveling up your guns, character to a degree. I don't even think it's that good for the most optimal way to level up a character, and it's a pretty cool horde style of mode, but once you've done it a few times, it's just kind of like, do I want to do this again? It's not like you're getting the instant dopamine of the loot from continuously doing the Killing Time missions, so I don't really feel the need to just constantly farm them. And then, unfortunately for us, we've got Kill Brainiac. I mean, Brainiac is probably one of the worst fights in the game because he takes on the form of the Flash, which was just the most infuriating fight, just because he's based on counters, and counters don't really do that much damage. So the Brainiac mission, having to replay that, we don't have to replay it, but replaying it, and it cost him 3,000, it's not great. It says you get awesome gear. I am yet to get a good drop from doing it, and I've done it a few times now. Speaking of drops and gear, I just want to touch on this again very lightly because there are so many other elements to this game why it is dead, and I will probably make an end game video of what I think they need to improve, especially in Season 1, for us to get excited about what's going to happen when Season 1 comes out. But look, I love the Bane tiers. They're good. I don't think they're as good as what some people make out. For me, it's not the be-all and end-all. I like the Bizarro stuff, the Black Mass stuff. I like these villain named guns. These are all super cool. If I'm being 100% honest with you, when I'm playing this game, it pretty much feels like traversal or grenades is the only way to be successful. Now, a lot of people climb through the mastery rank because of the Diablo Blaze cheese, which is fine. That's great for you. I'm glad you did that, but I didn't do that, and I've already noticed that unless you use a super meta build, which is really frustrating because only like 10 hours ago before this in the game, when I made the guide for the end game, I was like, oh, you know, making a build is a lot of fun. You don't have to put that much effort into it in order to progress it. Well, that's not really the case. None of the guns for me really feel like they pack a punch or pack any power. And I've seen some people liken this to Borderlands, but there's some serious guns in the Borderlands series that make you feel super powerful. And I don't think there's any guns. I'm just going to go out here and say that I might cop some hate for this, but I genuinely don't think there's any guns in this game that just feel super powerful. The power creep it's not there to any degree. And there's something with a looter shooter that you need to feel powerful when you finally, you know, got that unbelievable drop of a certain weapon, and then you get to start using it and it's just ferocious and it just feels so good and you're just shredding enemies. None of the guns feel like that. Grenades do. There's some builds where you could power up your grenades and consistently get grenade drops, and they're super cool. That's nice, but it's a looter shooter and not a looter grenade farm game. So I really hope they improve the guns to some degree. I don't know if there's something going on because I tried a crit build with Deadshot and we just never gained any extra crit. I don't know what it is. I put all my points into crit at one point and the crit didn't change from what it was before I put the points in there. In fact, I think it might have been worse after I put the points in there. And for me, being someone who really wants to see this game be successful, that really just talks to probably the bigger issue when it comes to this game. And that's, as a looter shooter, it has to give you that dopamine hit of more power over time, even if it's just a minimal amount. And I feel like this game at this stage falling a little bit short of that. If me as a casual can play the game for, I think it's 70 something hours now. I'm nearly 80 hours. I've started playing Last Epoch because I've kind of dropped off on the game now, waiting for season 1. But if me as a casual who works full time can get to this point in the game, this early in the game cycle, we have a problem. I don't know another looter shooter that I could go to where I would feel at this stage where I don't need to touch the game anymore until season 1 comes out. And I'm going to be good when season 1 comes out because I've got a ton of money. I've got a ton of resources. I'm looking pretty good and I've got some characters built pretty well. Now, again, I just don't really want to beat on the game that much. Like, it's not enjoyable for me to hate on something, but I want it to improve. And I think without voicing our opinions on what's wrong with it, it won't improve. There's one thing I will say. We have been getting some dialogue with Rocksteady, which is I'm actually quite happy with because the game has taken a lot of abuse, and the fact that we're still getting updates and we're still getting information from them, it is actually pretty good. It might not be the information we want, it might not be the improvements we want in the game, but developers are talking to us, and there's a lot of games out there that are in this similar position, and the developers do not talk to you one bit whatsoever. So it does seem with a bit of hope that knowing the developers are listening, that a lot of these changes might happen. At least fingers crossed. It might be the optimist in me. Now, when it comes to the game, I'm not expecting no miracle, and I don't think no miracle works here. You've got season 1 coming up soon, and I actually think season 1 is probably super pivotal because you're bringing out the Joker, which, to be honest with you, I don't see any other villain they bring out. Maybe Deathstroke. I mean, I want Deathstroke, but I don't know if a normal casual will be super obsessed with Deathstroke. The Joker is probably the biggest name villain that they could put into the game right now. And with him coming out in season 1, this is going to be a really important moment for them to try and establish some kind of player base back to the game. But like I said, I'm not really expecting any miracles. There's maybe one thing we can hope for. They've tried to patch little bits as they've been going, but they're holding back for this big update because in reality, we're actually expecting a lot in the update. I think there'll be a little bit more story to introduce the Joker. There's 2 new villain sets, so I'm guessing that's 2 new sets of villain weapons. Finally, the season pass and some other seasonal content, 3 more endgame missions. So it does sound like there's going to be a hell of a lot in the season 1 launch. But if they don't even have matchmaking ready by season 1, it's game over. People are just going to hate on this game even more. I know for some people, but I don't need matchmaking. I still like the game without it, but it doesn't matter. We need to be looking at the wider picture and what's going to make the game successful, because I don't want to be a year down the line where I'm playing this looter shooter and I really enjoy it, but nobody else is playing it, and then they stop making content for it. And that is the dangerous situation we are in. There is the other option that in a year's time, they release a version 2.0 with a ton of new content and the game is fully fixed. We've seen it with Cyberpunk, saw it with No Man's Sky, and other games have done that and then been super successful. New World was a bit, I mean, it had a lot more following at the launch, but New World was somewhat similar. They had horrendous queue times and loads of issues when the game came out with content and whatnot, and now it has grown to the point where it is super steady. I know it's an MMO, but it's super steady. It has a decent player base, and every time they release a new patch, I imagine there will be a growth in that player base. It's a stable MMO that I don't think anyone's going to be worried about disappearing for a while. Suicide Squad is a long way off being a stable looter shooter that I don't think is going to disappear for a while. I'm pinning my hopes on season 1. Season 1 has to bring a lot to the game so that the content gets out there. More and more people want to come and watch the game, want to watch gameplay, and want to play the game. Most importantly, that would be the biggest boost that Rocksteady and the Suicide Squad game could have right now. But that's just some of my thoughts. I don't really like talking negative all the time, but I think it's good to have these conversations on the internet so that we can talk about how stuff should be fixed or some of the issues that's with the game. If you're still someone who's having some severe bugs with the game and some real problems, that genuinely is awful to hear. If you have opinions down below as well, you know, leave them on where you think they should go next with the game. And if you agree, do you think season 1 is going to be super important? I will add as well that the price point is probably a big issue for the game right now, because why are you going to pay 60 quid? I paid 100, but why are you going to pay 60 quid for a game that you don't know if it's going to work or not for you on your system? I know I've been lucky up to this point. I've had just one bug the Metropolis bug didn't really affect me that much. I've been really lucky going through the game. Apart from the matchmaking bug-wise, I've been lucky. But when you hear some of the bugs being reported, some people can't even play. I was watching a stream earlier and someone said they can't even use Deathstroke anymore. So these bugs are in there. So how can you ever expect someone to just go, I'm just going to drop £60 on this game? I think a discount maybe around season 1. I know it's very early to put the game on discount, and some people would say that's basically you giving up and saying the game's dead. But the game going on discount around season 1 and them having a big season 1 would actually be extremely good for the game. And let's be honest, at this point, to bring more people into the game, no one's going to pay a 60 quid price point. Like, they're just not going to pay it. A lot of people will probably go, I'll just wait until it's on Game Pass in a year, because the likelihood of that happening is extremely high if the game doesn't end up being successful and they just want to make a quick buck out of it. I mean, we saw Gotham Knights. I don't even know if it was a full year before that went on Game Pass. Marvel's Avengers was another one. I think that was a year, but that ended up on Game Pass as well. So I don't know. I'd love people's feedback and their opinions on kind of what they think should happen. This was a Rambly video. If you enjoy the Rambly videos, let me know. New to the channel, smash subscribe. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Leave feedback, leave comments. I want to know your guys' opinions on really how we could get this game into the position that it needs to be for it to be long lasting and us to make tons of content on it. Appreciate you all for watching. I'll see you in the next video.